For 8 years, Melanie and I built what I thought was the perfect marriage. We were the couple friends envied successful and seemingly in sync on all major life decisions, including our plan to have children someday. We even bought our dream home, with a nursery already painted in soft yellow. As I watched my friends become fathers, my desire to start our family grew stronger. Then one evening, after a friend's baby shower, Melanie calmly announced, "I'm getting my tubes tied. No kids ever." I replied with a measured, "Your body," but inside my entire world collapsed like a house of cards. Before I continue this heartbreaking journey, let me know where you're watching from and hit that subscribe button to follow how I rebuilt my life from the ashes of broken promises. I met Melanie when I was 27, already establishing myself as a software engineer at a growing tech firm in Seattle. The annual tech conference in San Francisco brought talented professionals from across the country, but Melanie stood out immediately. She was brilliant, ambitious, and had a laugh that would make anyone smile. Our connection was immediate and intense. Within 3 days of meeting, we stayed up until 4 in the morning discussing everything from coding languages to our dreams of future family life. "I definitely want children," she told me during one of these late-night conversations, curled up on a hotel balcony overlooking the bay. "Just not right now. I want to build my career first, but when the time is right, absolutely." Those words would replay in my mind years later, haunting me with their apparent sincerity. Our relationship progressed rapidly. We dated long distance for 6 months before I transferred to her company in San Francisco. Within 18 months of meeting, I proposed on a cliff overlooking the Pacific Ocean. Melanie cried as she said yes, and we immediately started planning our future. At our wedding, Melanie's younger sister Abigail served as maid of honor. She was 19 then, still in nursing school, and looked up to her older sister with obvious admiration. I remember her emotional toast where she expressed hope that someday she would find a love as perfect as ours. The irony of those words would only become apparent years later. After the wedding, we bought our dream home in a family-friendly neighborhood. It had 4 bedrooms, a large backyard, and was in an excellent school district. When discussing which room would become an office versus guest rooms, Melanie suggested we designate one as a future nursery. She even participated enthusiastically when we painted it a gentle yellow color that would work for any gender. "Not too baby-specific," she said then, "but ready when we are." Those first few years were blissful. We established our careers, traveled extensively, and enjoyed the freedom of being a dual-income couple with no children. Then around our 3rd anniversary, our friends started having babies. One by one, our social circle transformed from dinner parties and weekend trips to baby showers and first birthday celebrations. With each friend who became a parent, my desire to start our own family grew stronger. As I approached my mid-30s, I began to feel a sense of readiness I hadn't experienced before. I would watch my friends with their children and feel a pull toward fatherhood that surprised me with its intensity. Melanie, however, seemed to be moving in the opposite direction. She would hold our friends' babies briefly before quickly passing them off. She started suggesting trips that weren't child-friendly and making comments about how exhausted our parent friends looked. Whenever I brought up the subject of starting our family, Melanie had a new reason to wait a promotion. She was working toward a trip we had planned, financial goals not yet met. Each excuse seemed reasonable on its own, but collectively they began to form a pattern I was too blind to see. Then came subtle changes in her behavior. She started declining invitations to baby showers and first birthday parties. She would scroll past friends' baby photos on social media without the customary likes or comments. When our best friends asked us to be godparents to their son, Melanie suggested I take on the role alone, as she would be too busy with work to fulfill the obligations properly. Still, I didn't see the truth. I attributed her behavior to stress, or perhaps fear about the massive life change that parenthood represented. I started bringing up the subject less frequently, not wanting to pressure her, believing that the right time we had discussed would eventually arrive. That day after the baby shower changed everything. It was for a colleague of Melanie's, and she had gone more out of obligation than desire. When she returned home, she seemed unusually quiet. We had dinner cleaned up and settled on the couch when she turned to me with a determined expression. "I need to tell you something important," she said, her voice steady. "I have an appointment next month to discuss getting my tubes tied. I do not want children, Campbell. Not now, not ever." The words hit me like a physical blow. Still, I maintained my composure. "Your body," I replied, simply excusing myself to take a walk that lasted for hours. When I returned, our house was dark except for the soft glow from the nursery room. I found Melanie sitting on the floor, leaning against the wall. "I should have told you sooner," she said. "I just kept hoping you would change your mind like I did." "Like you did?" I questioned. "So you did want children at one point?" "No," she admitted. "I never really wanted them. I just thought I was supposed to. But as time passed, I realized I was waiting for you to grow out of it. Most of our friends who have kids seem miserable to me. I don't want that life." That week, a heavy silence descended over our home. I went to work, came home, and went through the motions of life while trying to process this fundamental shift in my understanding of my marriage and future. Melanie tried to act as if nothing had changed, but everything had. The silence in our home became unbearable. After 2 weeks of minimal conversation, I scheduled an appointment with a therapist. I needed help processing my emotions, which ranged from anger to profound grief. Dr. Marshall, a compassionate man in his 60s, listened as I poured out the story of my marriage and the sudden revelation that had upended everything. "You're not just grieving the children you won't have," he explained during our third session. "You're grieving the loss of trust. Your wife wasn't honest with you about something fundamental to your life together." His words crystallized my feelings. This wasn't just about children, though. That was certainly central. It was about spending 8 years with someone who had allowed me to believe in a future she never intended to create. During those sessions, I explored my deepest feelings about fatherhood. I had grown up in a close family with parents who supported and nurtured me through every challenge. My father had been my role model, teaching me that strength came through compassion and presence. I had always imagined passing those lessons on to my own children, continuing a legacy of love and support. Armed with clarity from therapy, I approached Melanie with possible compromises. Perhaps adoption or surrogacy might feel different to her than biological children. Maybe we could start with fostering older children who needed homes. I researched options and presented them thoughtfully, hoping to find middle ground. Melanie listened politely but remained unmoved. "It's not about pregnancy or biology," she explained. "I don't want to be a mother in any capacity. I don't want our lives to revolve around children, regardless of how they come to us." We attempted marriage counseling, but after 3 months, our therapist gently suggested that we might be at an impasse on an issue that had no compromise. One couldn't have half a child or be part-time parents. This was binary, and we were on opposite sides. The realization that our marriage couldn't survive settled on me gradually, like snow accumulating until its weight becomes impossible to bear. We wanted fundamentally different lives, and staying together meant one of us living with permanent regret. If she relented, she would resent me and any children we had. If I abandoned my desire for fatherhood, I would eventually resent her. 6 months after her announcement, I filed for divorce. The day I told her, Melanie looked genuinely shocked. "You're really leaving me over this?" she asked, her voice breaking. "After everything we've built together, I'm not leaving you." I tried to explain. "I'm choosing a different future than the one you want, just like you chose a different future than the one I thought we shared." Despite her initial shock, Melanie didn't fight the divorce. The process was as amicable as such a painful dissolution could be. We sold our dream home. The nursery still painted that soft yellow. Dividing our assets was straightforward, as we both had successful careers and had maintained some financial independence. Friends took sides, as friends often do. Some thought I was cruel for leaving a marriage over something they considered optional. Others understood that parenthood was a non-negotiable life goal for me. Most just expressed sadness that two people who had seemed so perfect together couldn't find a way forward. The months following the divorce were among the darkest of my life. I moved into a small apartment and threw myself into work, taking on extra projects to fill evenings and weekends that stretched emptily before me. I was 35, starting over with a dream that now felt further away than ever. Gradually, I reconnected with friends who had children. Being Uncle Campbell brought joy back into my life, even as it reminded me of what I had lost. I joined a support group for people going through divorce and started rebuilding a social life independent of my marriage. 6 months after the divorce was finalized, I attended the birthday party of a mutual friend. I hadn't expected Melanie to be there, and was relieved to learn she had declined the invitation. However, someone else was there. I hadn't anticipated seeing Abigail, Melanie's younger sister. At 27, Abigail had grown from the teenager at our wedding into a confident young woman. She had completed nursing school and specialized in pediatric care, a choice that apparently caused some tension with Melanie, who couldn't understand her sister's desire to work with children. "Campbell," she said, approaching me with a tentative smile. "I wasn't sure you'd be here. I almost didn't come," I admitted. "How have you been, Abigail?" We found a quiet corner and talked for nearly 2 hours. She asked about the divorce, and I explained as honestly as I could without vilifying her sister. "It doesn't surprise me," Abigail said softly. "Melanie never liked babies even when we were kids. She would never play house or dolls with me. I just thought she had changed." As the party wound down, Abigail mentioned she was training for a hiking marathon for pediatric cancer research. "I hike every Saturday at Redwood Park," she said. "You used to enjoy hiking, right? You're welcome to join sometime if you want company." That casual invitation would alter the course of my life in ways neither of us could have imagined. The following Saturday, I met Abigail at the trailhead expecting a polite hike with my former sister-in-law. What I didn't expect was how easy our conversation would flow, or how much we had in common beyond our connection to Melanie. Abigail loved cooking, as did I. We shared a passion for historical documentaries, science fiction novels, and had similar views on everything from politics to pineapple on pizza. Most importantly, she spoke openly about her desire to have a family someday. "I always wanted to be a mother," she explained as we reached a scenic overlook. "Working with children at the hospital only confirms it. Even the difficult days when the kids are sick and scared, I find meaning in being there for them." We began hiking together regularly. These outings were strictly platonic at first, a friendship developing between two people connected by a complicated past. I was cautious, aware of the potential for misunderstandings or accusations that I had somehow been interested in Abigail during my marriage. 3 months into our friendship, things shifted. We had hiked to a secluded waterfall, and the conversation turned to relationships. Abigail mentioned a recent failed date, laughing about the man's horror when she mentioned wanting 3 or 4 children. "He nearly choked on his drink," she said, smiling. "Told me most women my age were focused on careers, not cribs." "His loss," I replied without thinking. "Any man would be lucky to build a family with someone as caring as you." The moment stretched between us, laden with unspoken possibility. When Abigail leaned toward me, the kiss felt both surprising and inevitable. We pulled away quickly, both startled by crossing this line. "I didn't plan that," she said immediately. "Neither did I assured her. The drive home was quiet, both of us processing what had happened. The next day we met for coffee and had the difficult conversation our kiss demanded. "I have feelings for you," Campbell Abigail admitted, "but this is complicated on so many levels." "It's more than complicated," I agreed. "You're Melanie's sister. People will talk, make assumptions about when these feelings developed." We discussed the potential fallout at length. Her parents had remained cordial to me after the divorce, but would likely view a relationship between us as a betrayal. Mutual friends would question my intentions and the timing. And Melanie would undoubtedly be hurt, regardless of the fact that our marriage had ended for reasons unrelated to Abigail. "Maybe we should take a step back," I suggested reluctantly. "The last thing I want is to damage your relationship with your family." Abigail considered this, then shook her head firmly. I have spent my entire life in Melanie's shadow, careful never to upset her or rock the boat. I watched her treat you terribly at the end, stringing you along for years about something she knew was vital to you. I'm not going to let her dictate my happiness now that you're both divorced. Still, we decided to proceed cautiously, keeping our developing relationship private, while we determined if our feelings were strong enough to weather the inevitable storm. We dated quietly for 2 months, meeting in neighboring towns and keeping our connection off social media. As our relationship deepened, I fell in love with Abigail's compassionate heart, her unwavering honesty, and her courage in pursuing what she wanted despite potential criticism. She was different from Melanie in fundamental ways, valuing family connections and open communication above career advancement and social standing. 4 months into our relationship, we were discovered. A friend spotted us at a restaurant in a town we thought was safe from familiar eyes. Within days, Melanie called Abigail furious and hurt. "How could you do this to me?" she demanded, according to Abigail. "My own sister with my ex-husband." The confrontation was painful but perhaps necessary. Abigail stood her ground, explaining that our relationship had developed months after the divorce was finalized, and that our connection was genuine and important to her. "You divorced him because you didn't want the same life," she reminded her sister. "You cannot divorce him and still claim him as off-limits, especially when you were the one who misled him for years." Melanie's parents were initially shocked and disapproving. Her father called me personally, questioning my intentions and suggesting I had somehow manipulated both his daughters. I listened respectfully but stood firm in the truth of how our relationship had developed naturally and honestly. Despite the family tension, Abigail and I continued to build our relationship. After a year together, I proposed during a return trip to the waterfall where we had first kissed. Unlike my elaborate proposal to Melanie years earlier, this one was intimate and heartfelt, focused on the life we hoped to create, rather than the moment itself. Our wedding was small, held in a garden with only supportive friends and family present. Melanie did not attend, nor did her parents, though they had gradually become more accepting of our relationship. Abigail's friends from the hospital formed her bridal party, and my brother served as best man. We moved into a new home, deliberately choosing a neighborhood and house unlike the one I had shared with Melanie. This was a fresh start, unburdened by ghosts of my previous marriage. 2 months after our wedding, we decided to start trying for a baby, both eager to begin building our family. When Abigail showed me the positive pregnancy test, the joy I felt was overwhelming. We celebrated quietly, savoring the news between just the two of us before sharing it with others. As Abigail's pregnancy progressed, we began discussing how to handle family gatherings, knowing we would eventually need to navigate situations that included Melanie. The first test came with Christmas traditionally celebrated at Abigail's parents' home. After much discussion with her parents, it was agreed that both Abigail and Melanie would be invited along with me. Abigail was 4 months pregnant by then, just beginning to show, but easily concealable with loose clothing. We had decided to announce the pregnancy to her family during the holiday gathering, hoping the joyful news might help bridge remaining family divides. We arrived at her parents' home on Christmas Eve, nervous but hopeful. Melanie arrived shortly after, cordial but cold. Throughout dinner, she maintained a distance, speaking primarily to her parents and largely ignoring us. Still, the evening progressed without incident, and we began to hope the gift exchange would go smoothly. Abigail and I had prepared special gifts for her parents, a small box containing a framed sonogram picture with the words, "Grandchild arriving June 25th" engraved on the frame. When her mother opened it, her initial confusion gave way to tears of joy. Her father embraced us, both his previous reservations seemingly forgotten in the moment of learning he would be a grandfather. It was then that Melanie asked to see what had caused such emotion. Her mother handed her the frame, and the room fell silent as Melanie stared at the image. The color drained from her face. "You are having a baby," she stated flatly, looking between us. "You left me because I wouldn't give you children, and now you are having one with my sister." "Melanie," I began carefully, That's not fair. I left because we wanted different futures and we both deserved to find happiness with people who shared our goals. How convenient that you found that person in my own family, she snapped, standing abruptly. Was this the plan all along? Wait until I finally tell the truth about not wanting children, divorce me. Then run to my fertile little sister. The accusation hung in the air, ugly and painful. Years of contained emotions finally broke through my carefully maintained composure. I spent 8 years believing in a future you never intended to create. I said, my voice low but firm. You knew how much being a father meant to me, yet you strung me along with promises of someday and when the time is right. You had the nursery painted. You discussed names. You let me build my hopes for a family while knowing you would eventually shatter them. Abigail placed her hand on mine, a gesture of support but also a gentle reminder to remain calm. She turned to her sister with compassion rather than anger. Melanie, you made your choice, and it was valid for you, she said softly. Campbell made his choice too. We found each other after both your lives had already taken separate paths. This baby was conceived in love between two married people who want the same things in life. I am sorry for your pain, but not for our happiness. Melanie looked at her sister for a long moment, then at me and finally at her parents, who stood in uncomfortable silence. Without another word, she grabbed her coat and left the front door, closing with decisive force behind her. The remainder of the evening was subdued, with Abigail's parents caught between joy about the grandchild and concern for their other daughter. As we prepared to leave, her mother hugged us both. She will heal in time, she said, though uncertainty tinged her words. Family is complicated, but it remains family. Emma Rose was born on a perfect June morning, 7.5 pounds of wonder with her mother's eyes, and what everyone claimed was my smile. Holding my daughter for the first time, I experienced a love so profound it seemed to rewrite everything I thought I knew about connection and purpose. The months following Emma's birth were a blur of sleepless nights, endless wonder, and the kind of joy I had always hoped to experience as a father. Abigail was an incredible mother patient, even during the most challenging moments, and full of intuitive wisdom I could only admire. As I watched my wife and daughter together, I occasionally thought about the winding path that had led me to this happiness. The pain of my first marriage's end had been necessary, though I would never have chosen it. Without that heartbreak, I would never have found my way to the family that now filled my days with meaning. Melanie remained distant for the first year of Emma's life. She sent a generic gift when the baby was born, but declined invitations to meet her niece. Her parents became regular visitors to our home, gradually bringing photos of Emma back into their home, which Melanie still visited regularly. The thaw came unexpectedly when Emma was 14 months old. Abigail's parents were celebrating their 40th wedding anniversary, and both daughters were expected to attend. After careful discussion, we decided to bring Emma, knowing it would likely be Melanie's first time seeing her. I felt tense as we arrived at the restaurant, unsure how the evening would unfold. Melanie was already seated with her parents, a new boyfriend beside her. She looked up as we entered, her eyes immediately finding Emma in my arms. For a moment, pain flickered across her face, quickly replaced by composed politeness. Throughout dinner, she maintained her distance, but I noticed her watching Emma with undisguised curiosity. As the evening progressed, Emma, ever the social butterfly, toddled around the table, greeting everyone with babbling enthusiasm. When she reached Melanie's chair, my former wife froze momentarily, before offering a tentative smile. "Hello there," she said softly. Emma responded by offering Melanie a partially eaten bread roll, her universal gesture of friendship. The simple act broke the tension, drawing a genuine laugh from Melanie. She didn't hold or play with Emma that night, but a barrier had been breached. Over the following years, Melanie gradually developed a relationship with her niece, never particularly close but civil and occasionally warm. She eventually married her boyfriend, a widower with teenage children, who had no interest in having more, a perfect match for her desired lifestyle. At family gatherings, we maintained a cordial relationship, focused on ensuring peace for the sake of Abigail's parents and our growing family. Emma was joined by a brother Thomas 2 years later, and the cousins Melanie once feared having become the center of family celebrations. Looking back now 7 years into my marriage with Abigail, I can see how that painful period of my life taught me essential truths. Authenticity in relationships isn't optional. It's fundamental. People can want different things without either being wrong, but pretending to want the same things to preserve a relationship only delays inevitable pain. Most importantly, I learned that sometimes the hardest decisions lead to the greatest joy. Walking away from my marriage to Melanie was the most difficult choice I had ever made, but it allowed both of us to create lives true to our deepest desires. She found fulfillment in her career and child-free marriage, while I discovered the family life I had always longed for. Emma recently asked about her Aunt Melanie and why she does not have children like we do. We explained simply that different people want different things from life, and that is perfectly fine. What matters is being honest about those differences, especially with the people we love. Have you ever had to make a difficult choice that ultimately led to unexpected happiness? Share your story in the comments below. If this journey of heartbreak and redemption resonated with you, please hit the like button and subscribe to hear more real-life stories of overcoming life's challenges. Share this video with someone who might be struggling with difficult decisions in their own relationships. Thank you for listening to my story, and remember that sometimes the end of one dream makes room for another, even more beautiful one to take its place.